Hello, this is the Unit 3 Ancient Egypt notes. These are comprehensive notes that cover the whole week of content that we are going to cover so we can get our notes done and then we can delve into some activities and some videos. When you open the notes, it is going to appear really, really small where it seems like you can't read the information. You click View, Zoom, 100%. View, zoom, 100%. Again, that's view, zoom, 100%. All right, so now into our notes. We always start a unit or a subunit with geography. Egypt is on the continent of Africa. All right, it is, when you're looking at the continent, it is in the top right-hand corner if you're looking directly onto a map. So the Nile River flows through Egypt. The Nile River is over 4,000 miles long. That's the distance from New York to Alaska. So if you can imagine the U.S. on a map, New York State to the state of Alaska. So the Egyptians settled along the river just like the Mesopotamian city-states and other early civilizations. Yes, people were nomadic at one point and they were roaming around, but they realized that they could control their food supply by settling near rivers because the rivers provided water and the rivers helped fertilize the soil. So early people, when creating civilizations that are settled, sedentary, are looking to settle near rivers. So the reasons for settling near rivers is that they can travel, it's safer to travel through a river and it's quicker. They can trade, they can use that surplus. They gain an irrigation for crops. There's water for drinking and cooking, and then there's that yearly flooding which leaves behind rich, fertile soil. The yearly flooding in Egypt was annual and it was at the same time of the year. So we actually get our 365-day calendar from the Egyptians and the flooding. It's, again, to remember that they settle near rivers, not oceans, not seas, because yes, they can boil some water, but that boiling isn't going to take out the salt. And if you keep drinking the seawater, you will become dehydrated and die. So they want to settle near fresh water by rivers. So the Nile River flows from south to north, and that's opposite of about almost all of our rivers in the world. It flows from south to north. So Upper Egypt is actually at the lower part, and Lower Egypt is up at the upper part. The Nile flows this way because Upper Egypt at the bottom has a higher elevation, and water runs normally. It uses gravity, so it's going from a high elevation to a low elevation. So Egypt has a lot of natural barriers. We've got mountains and deserts and seas. So that allowed the civilization to become isolated and in turn create a unique culture. They could travel places, but it was so hard to travel through the desert that it just wasn't traveling, people weren't traveling as much idly. You went with a purpose. So Ancient Egypt has this rich, unique culture that is separate from the other cultures in the area. Because we all just talked about Mesopotamia, city-states, because they had a similar culture. And in this map, Mesopotamia, we're talking over here, but here's Egypt. We've got the Red Sea, we've got all these deserts, we've got the Mediterranean Sea. It is isolated. And so Egyptians use irrigation techniques. They use canals to carry water to fields that were not right beside the river, because as their population is growing, you cannot have all of the farms right alongside the river. So they have to carry water from the river to the fields. So Egyptians are going to utilize sails and also invent boat rudders so that they can travel up and down the river. They're traveling up and down the river to control their empire because this whole massive area is ancient Egypt. So we see Lower Egypt is up here closer to the delta, that triangle where it branches out. We see those little lines. And then so down here, this Upper Egypt has a higher elevation. So it's going, using gravity, from going really a high elevation to a low elevation out towards a delta. So again, they utilize sails and rudders so they can travel up and down this river so that they can control their empire, put down any uprisings, and that they can also travel to trade their surplus. So down here we see canals, and then we see their boats and utilizing that rudder. All right, government. The Egyptians believed that their pharaoh was both a god and a king. So pharaoh is the name for the head, for their ruler, whereas in some civilizations we might know it as emperor or as king or later Caesar. In ancient Egypt, they used the term pharaoh. So the most powerful person in ancient Egypt was the pharaoh, and the pharaoh is a political and religious leader of the Egyptian people, and he holds, I say he because for a certain point you had to be male to be the pharaoh. There were a few female pharaohs, so excuse me for automatically jumping to say he, but the pharaoh position was a political and a religious leader, holding lord of two lands and high priest of every temple. So lord, we see that government position, and priest, we see that religious component to the pharaoh position. So Egypt's government was a theocracy. It's a government in which a country is ruled by religious leaders, since the pharaoh was the head of both the government and the religion. Yes, they were priests, but what pharaoh said, the priests then had to do. Social structure. The person that's highest on the pyramid is the pharaoh. End of story. The vizier is the pharaoh's right-hand person. This person is going to go tell everyone else what they should be doing. The nobles and priests are next underneath the vizier. So the vizier, the nobles, and the priests make up bureaucracy. That's one of our vocab words. It's a large group of people who are involved in running a government, but who are not elected. Next, we get scribes and soldiers. Scribes learn the intensive hieroglyphic system, and only people from the nobles, like if your family was a noble, then you could go become a scribe. There was a less complicated, a simplified hieroglyphic system for craftsmen and tradesmen and farmer, but the full extensive hieroglyphic process in the alphabet is what is used for recording what's happening in the government and in religion. So we get craftsmen and tradesmen are second from the bottom, and farmers and enslaved people are at the very bottom of the social structure. This social structure here is a pretty general overview of what our social structure looks like for most of our civilizations, where we've got the ruler at the top, we have nobles underneath, we have religious leaders that are a step below the leader. Also with the nobles, we've got scribes and soldiers and craftsmen, and then farmers and enslaved people at the bottom. Now, farmers or enslaved people are the biggest group, and they receive the least amount of respect, but so much of society relies on their work. And unfortunately, that's how a social structure pyramid works. The group at the bottom is the biggest in terms of numbers. They receive the least amount of respect, but usually the economy relies on what they're doing. So here we also have a visual of Pharaoh at the top, farmers, and I know it says slaves. The better term is to say enslaved people. All right, religious beliefs and mummification. The Egyptians practiced a polytheistic religion. There were over 2,000 gods and goddesses, and the chief god was Amon, the god of Thebes, and he was later merged with the god of the sun, Ra, to become Amon-Ra. So the pharaoh, each pharaoh is believed to be Ra, the god of the sun. That's also why anything the pharaoh says, they do, because it's an extension of their main god. So Egyptians believed that the soul could continue its life after death, but it needed the body to have a sort of a home base. So in the desert, underneath this, if you dig deep enough, there's a cool temperature in the ground, so that helps preserve the body. Everyone would be buried, but priests and pharaohs and some nobles would receive the full mummification, where the organs are taken out, the body's preserved with salt, it's wrapped in linens, buried with furniture and jewels and food, all of that because those people, like the pharaoh, needed all of that stuff for the afterlife. And that's when social structure comes into play. Everyone would be buried, but the full mummification process was only for those at the top of the pyramid. And the bodies were wrapped in linen. Achievements. The Egyptians' lasting achievements include mummification, monuments, hieroglyphics, and pyramids. The Egyptians valued their leaders, so each pharaoh was the embodiment of their sun god. So they honored them with pyramids and monuments. They would start this construction before the pharaoh passed away because it would take at least 5 years to build a pyramid, sometimes even more than 5 years to build a pyramid. The Egyptians believed in the importance of recording government and religious events, so they invent this hieroglyphic system. The Rosetta Stone that was discovered in 1901 has 3 different languages, and one of them is the Egyptian hieroglyphics. They also had Greek on the Rosetta Stone, and the Rosetta Stone was like a translation. When you receive instructions for how to build something, it has instructions in different languages, and you just find the language that you're able to read. Okay, Rosetta Stone's a little bit like that. So the Rosetta Stone in 1901 helped us understand what the hieroglyphics say. The Egyptians also invented papyrus. It's a type of paper made from the papyrus plant. You might have heard of papyrus because there is a card company that is called Papyrus that uses that. All right. And this is ancient Egypt. And here we have the Great Sphinx, and here we see hieroglyphics.